So I invite President Trump, if he can come here, I will need 24 minutes. Yes, 24 minutes, not more. А пояснити, як? Yes, not more, 24 minutes to explain President Trump that he can't manage this war.
This is my video update from Athens, Greece on this Tuesday, midday, November the 7th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's Middle East tour. Yesterday, Blinken made a quick stop in Cyprus, and he was greeted by the president of Cyprus, where they had a very quick meeting. They talked about maritime corridors from Cyprus to Gaza in order to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. It was a very quick meeting. And then according to the office of the president of Cyprus, it was kind of a surprise stop in Cyprus. And then Blinken made his way to Turkey for a very big meeting with the Turkish foreign minister. And when the U.S. Secretary of State landed in Turkey, he was greeted by the governor of Ankara. That is who met the U.S. Secretary of State at the airports, not Erdogan, not the foreign minister of Turkey, but the governor of Ankara met Blinken at the airport. Sorry, the deputy governor of Ankara, my bad, the deputy governor of Ankara, and no one else, no other officials met the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken at the airport when he arrived to Turkey. Eventually, Blinken did meet with the foreign minister of Turkey to pitch his peacekeeper plan. Keep in mind that Anthony Blinken is touring the Middle East with his brilliant idea for what's going to happen in Gaza when the war is over. Not about what's happening now in Gaza, but his plan for what happens in Gaza when the war is over. And Blinken's brilliant idea is to station US, UK, German, French, as well as Arab nations to station peacekeepers indefinitely in Gaza to keep the peace and to make sure that Hamas does not return. That is Blinken's brilliant plan. And Blinken is making the case that these peacekeepers should not be seen as Western military occupiers when they are stationed in Gaza, but as warm, friendly, and fuzzy peacekeepers who are in Gaza to make sure that everything is safe and orderly and that Hamas does not return to Gaza. That is Blinken's brilliant idea, and everywhere he has gone, he has been ridiculed, talked down to, and most of the leaders in the Middle East that have heard of this peacekeeper plan have basically told Blinken that he is delusional. That is basically what they've been saying. I don't know if they've used the words delusional. Maybe they have, but they've basically been telling Blinken, bro, what are you talking about? Peacekeepers for when the war is over. What do we do right now, Mr. U.S. Secretary of State? What are your ideas? What are your proposals for dealing with the war that is taking place right now in Gaza and the thousands and thousands of people that are dying, women and children that are dying in Gaza right now at this very moment? I believe that I think it was the foreign minister of Jordan actually told Blinken something like, what are you talking about with a peacekeeper plan when the war wraps up? What is going to be of Gaza when the war wraps up? He told Blinken, is Gaza going to be a wasteland? Are we going to have millions of refugees. What are your ideas for now, Blinken? And Blinken, he doesn't have any ideas for what's going on right now. His tour is focused on when the war is over. So he arrives in Turkey and he is going to pitch his peacekeeper plan to the foreign minister of Turkey. And he meets the foreign minister of Turkey and he shakes his hand and he goes in for the customary hug and kiss on the cheek. That is what Blinken went to do when he met the foreign minister of Turkey. And the foreign minister of Turkey was like, whoa, no hug and kiss for you, Mr. Secretary of State. You are not worthy to hug and kiss me. And that was really embarrassing for the U.S. Secretary of State. And it was caught on video, Blinken going in for the hug and for the kiss on the cheek, and the Turkish foreign minister going, nope, no hug and kiss for you. The Croatian minister had more luck with Annalena 720i when he kissed her on the cheek the other day. At least he actually got a kiss on the cheek from Annalena 720i, even though Annalena 720i was Annalena Baerbock. She was very upset with the fact that the Croatian foreign minister kissed her on the cheek without her permission. And Blinken, he didn't even get a hug from the Turkish foreign minister. So this peacekeeper plan that Blinken is putting out there is a disaster. It is a complete disaster. And everywhere Blinken goes, he's pretty much getting pooped on everywhere he goes. And even Netanyahu, even Israel, they didn't want to hear anything about Blinken's peacekeeper plan. And Netanyahu, during an interview with ABC, as Blinken is touring the Middle East, talking about his post-war ideas, Netanyahu, he's giving an interview to ABC News, and Netanyahu is telling ABC News, peacekeepers from the US, the UK, Germany, France, what are you talking about? Netanyahu is telling ABC News. Israel is going to secure Gaza indefinitely. That is what Netanyahu told ABC News. Let me find the exact quote from Netanyahu. I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, have the overall security responsibility in Gaza, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have that security responsibility, what we have is the eruption of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't imagine. That is Netanyahu basically telling ABC News that Blinken's plan of peacekeepers is a non-starter. No ceasefire from Netanyahu. There's going to be no ceasefire. Maybe a very, very short and brief humanitarian pause in certain areas in Gaza, maybe. And who's going to take over security of Gaza for an indefinite time period, according to Netanyahu? Israel. So Blinken, as Alexander has said so many times, Blinken is touring the Middle East, and he's talking to himself. The leaders of the Middle East countries, Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, Turkey, they're not listening to Blinken. And Israel, they're not listening to Blinken. So who is Blinken talking to? Himself. That's who he's talking to. Erdogan, he said that things are getting really bad too, by the way, on a diplomatic level for the entire region. Erdogan, he is saying that Turkey has erased Netanyahu. That is what Erdogan said. We can no longer talk to Netanyahu. Quote, we erased him. South Africa is the latest country to begin to begin to break off diplomatic relations with Israel. South Africa to recall all diplomats from Israel, the government said. On a U.S. domestic level, we have the State Department. This is what Blinken heads. This is his department, right? The State Department, according to Politico, they leaked a memo. How this memo got leaked, I don't know. I don't know how this memo got leaked, but Politico got their hands on a leaked memo, which is lower and mid-level State Department employees. The memo is saying that the State Department, the Biden White House, they are not criticizing Israel for any of the actions it's taking towards Gaza. They're not taking a balanced approach. So you have a lot of lower to middle level employees at the State Department criticizing their boss's handling of the war in Israel and in Gaza. So things are not going well for Blinken as he tours the Middle East. Things are not going well for Blinken and the Biden White House at home. Even Obama's number one, what's David Axelrod, his number one advisor, or his number two? He's his number two, right? David Axelrod. Even he came out yesterday. It is David, right? Axelrod. I forgot his first name. But Axelrod, he came out the other day in an interview and he said that Biden must go. He said that if Biden, being the president of the United States, if he decides to run for re-election, well, that's up to Biden, and being the leader of the leader of the Democrat Party, well, if he decides to really run for re-election, well, the Democrats, they have to support him. But Obama's number two, his most trusted confidant, Mr. Axelrod, he said that he would prefer if Biden step aside because of his handling of the war in Israel. That's what this is really all about, because the way Biden has handled the war in Israel, he's upset. He's upset the pro-Israeli crowds. He's upset the pro-Palestinian crowds. He's lost the Arab Muslim vote. He's lost the Generation Z vote. The international community, they don't want to meet with Biden. They don't want to meet with Blinken. They don't want to hear from Biden. They don't want to hear from Blinken. And so this is becoming a complete, absolute disaster. And Axelrod is saying that it would be best if Biden just step aside. But if Biden steps aside, who do you have as president? Well, you have the vice president, Kamala Harris, and she's more unpopular than Biden. And you have Gavin Newsom kind of waiting in the wings, looking at the DNC and the Democrat establishment saying, look, guys, get Biden to step aside. And as far as Kamala is concerned, just tell her that she can be my running mate. That's what Gavin Newsom is basically signaling. Kamala can stay as vice president and she can be my vice president. So you have a big mess that is shaping up in the Biden White House with the 2024 presidential campaign. And when Axelrod is saying that Biden should step aside, that's pretty much Obama signaling that it's time for Biden to go. And if Obama turns on Biden, well, it's game over, because Obama, he's the one that got Biden elected, pretty much. He pretty much got Biden elected. So if he turns on Biden, it's lights out for Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son. So you have a very isolated Biden White House and U.S. State Department. So is there anybody out there in the international community that supports Joe Bidenopoulos and Anthony Blinken, that supports the peacekeeper plan that they've come up with? Anybody out there? Anybody out there? There is. And her name is Ursula van der Crazy, and Jungle Joseph Borrell. They're on board with Blinken's peacekeeper plan, though Ursula said that perhaps the peacekeepers in Gaza, for when the war ends, perhaps the peacekeeping force should be under the mandate of the United Nations. But peacekeeper plan for when the war is over, good idea, according to Ursula. And you know, Ursula, she took things one step further. She actually gave her own 5 principles for Gaza. 5 principles for Gaza, as proposed by Ursula von der Leyen. Euronews is reporting, no Hamas rule, no blockade. Von der Leyen proposes 5 principles for Gaza's future. Ursula von der Leyen has proposed 5 basic principles to guide the future of the Gaza Strip once the Israel-Hamas war comes to an end. Want to hear the 5 principles? Keep in mind, these are principles. You want to hear Ursula's 5 principles? Let me read you her 5 principles for when the war is over. No ideas as to what to do now, right? But when the war is over, Ursula has 5 principles. Here they are. Principle number 1, no safe haven for terrorists. Principle number 2, no Hamas-led government. Principle number 3, no long-term Israeli security presence. Principle number 4, no forced displacement of Palestinians. And principle number 5, no sustained blockade. Those are Ursula's 5 principles for Gaza when the war is over. Straight from the EU commissioner, everybody, her 5 principles for the Gaza Strip. The EU is useless, absolutely useless, absolutely useless. It would be better if the EU just didn't take a position at all at this point in time. These 5 principles for when the war is over are meaningless, useless. I mean, whatever, Ursula, whatever. A 5-year-old could have come up with these 5 principles. But you know what this is really all about is Ursula trying to make amends for the trips that she took to Israel when the war first started, and her pledge of unconditional support to Netanyahu, which angered many diplomats and kleptocrats in Brussels. They were so angry with Ursula and her unconditional support for Netanyahu that they even circulated a document which pretty much called for Ursula to step down and resign. So Ursula now she is trying to make it seem like, yes, she supports Israel, and she wants Hamas to be annihilated, but she's also throwing some support to the Palestinians as well in order to win back the EU diplomats and kleptocrats who turned against her when she traveled to Israel on October 8th and 9th after the terror attacks and once the war got underway. And you know, Euronews, which is the propaganda media outlet of the European Union, they actually say as much way down in this article, like the final paragraphs of this article, of the section where they talk about Ursula and her five brilliant ideas. Euronews says the speech, she said this in a speech, the speech from Ursula represents a new tone for von der Leyen, who was criticized in the first days of the conflict for adopting a position seen as overly one-sided in favor of Israel, and reflects the growing concern in Brussels over the mounting death toll in the region. Basically, Ursula is just trying to remove some heat that she received from her initial stance on the war in Israel. So Ursula also announced that she's going to be giving $25 million in humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. This brings the total amount of EU humanitarian aid to $100 million. And she's actually saying that this humanitarian aid could be delivered via Egypt, but she's also working with Cyprus, with Cypriot officials, to create a maritime corridor and to deliver this additional 25 million in humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. $25 million in humanitarian aid from the European Union as they provide, or as they're trying to provide, $50 billion in aid and weapons to the Elensky regime. 50 billion euros in aid and weapons to the Elensky regime, and $25 million in humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. Doesn't seem like a lot, 25 million, especially when you compare it to the tens of billions of dollars that the European Union has given to the Elensky regime in military weapons. But there you have it. That is what is going on in the European Union. And let's now talk about Project Ukraine, which with each passing day, it is getting more and more interesting. Let's just use the word interesting. With each passing day, the collapse of the Elensky regime is getting more cinematic. It really does remind me of like a celebrity marriage that you know is going to just crash and burn. You know it's going to happen, and you know it's going to be a spectacular crash and burn. And that's what's happening in Ukraine. That's what it reminds me of. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. you know that marriage is going to. But boy, is it interesting to watch it all unfold. And that's what we're seeing now in Project Ukraine. I said yesterday, it's Z versus Z. That's what I said yesterday. I'm gonna copyright or trademark that. Z versus Z. Zelensky versus Zelensky. And boy, did we get some big news yesterday in Z versus Z. First off, Elensky, he announced that there's going to be no election in Ukraine because of the war. He said we can't possibly have elections. Yep, that's Ukraine, everybody. The democracy, the shining example of a democracy that hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars from the collective West has gone to this democracy. And now you have Elensky saying, yeah, there's going to be no election at all. And Elensky gets it, as dumb as Elensky is, he does understand how to survive, how to stay alive. He understands that if there's an election, he's going to be maneuvered out. Most likely Arestovich will be maneuvered in, and he understands that if he's maneuvered out, he's toast. He is toast. Stick a fork in him. The Banderites are going to get him. Remember, Lindsey Graham, he wanted to have election. He wants to have elections in Ukraine in 2024. Lindsey Graham wants to have elections in Ukraine. The chief neocon, Lindsey Graham, he wants to have elections in Ukraine because he wants Elensky out, and he wants to get Elensky out in as smooth a way as possible, right? Making it seem like this was some democratic choice by the people of Ukraine. So all is good. And then they'll deal with Elensky once he's not president anymore, because Elensky knows way too much, right? He knows way too much. And so the plan from the neocons was, look, we got to get Elensky out. The guy's a disaster. He's a train wreck. So let's have elections, and let's make it seem like this was a smooth democratic process, and then we'll deal with Elensky when he's out of office. But Elensky's like, no, 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 no. The only way that I'm staying on planet Earth is if I remain in power in Ukraine. So we're calling elections off. No more elections. So that's the democracy of Ukraine. The collective West, the leadership, the mainstream media, they've been telling us that we have to give 10 and 20 and 60 billion to Ukraine because this is all about democracy, right? This is all about democracy. We have to fight for democracy. Ukraine's fighting for democracy so that the rest of the world can live in democracy utopia, right? Ukraine's fighting for the rest of the world. And Zelensky comes out yesterday and says no elections. What a clown world, man. What a joke. What a freaking joke. He's jailed priests. He's jailed opposition parties. He's shut down opposition media. And now he's coming out and saying that there's going to be no elections. He knows the Banderites are going to get him. He knows the neocons, they want to get him. The only country, everyone knows Elensky is a loser and a disaster. The only country, I'm just going to tell it to you like it is, everybody. The only country that wants to keep Elensky in power is Russia. Russia. Yeah, Russia. Elensky's like a dream come true for Russia as far as this conflict goes. You can't find a more incompetent, more disliked leader for Ukraine than Elensky. If Elensky goes, someone competent may actually take his place. So, I mean, wow. Anyway, Z versus Z. Let's get back to Z versus Z. And what happened? What happened? Well, Zaluzhny's number two, his number one assistant or his chief of staff, whatever. This guy was at home, and now there's two different narratives that I've read. This guy was killed. He was assassinated. But the two narratives are that he mishandled grenades and explosives. That's the first narrative. The other narrative is that a gift was delivered to this guy, and in the gift, it was his birthday or something like that. And in this gift bag were shot glasses shaped like grenades, along with real grenades and explosives, and boom, he was killed. And from what I understand, I think his son was injured, but his wife, and I think his wife and his daughter and his other family members were okay. But this guy was assassinated. Now, we don't know who did this. We have no idea who was behind this, but this really does remind me of a Godfather type of moment, huh? Let me read you a tweet from Zlati71. Zaluzhny's assistant, 39-year-old Gennady Kristiakov, was killed near Kiev. Option number one. A grenade exploded in his house due to careless handling, police said. His son was also injured. The wife and daughter were not injured. During the inspection of the apartment, 5 more grenades were found. That's option number one. Option number two. However, later the media, citing the wife of the deceased, reported that the explosion occurred when the man opened a box with gifts that he received for his birthday. This version was confirmed by the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. Who could have done this? Who could have done this? I just don't know. Just don't know. Anyway, sticking with Ukraine, we have the foreign minister, Mr. Kuleba. He said some very interesting things in an interview with German media outlet Deutsche Welle. And Mr. Kuleba, he said that Ukraine cannot solely depend on the United States. And he talked up Ukraine's cooperation with the European Union, especially when it comes to the manufacturing of wonder weapons. And I quote, "As for what might happen in 2024, we'll have to wait and see. But we are preparing because we cannot afford to depend only on American support. Thanks to our friends in Europe and other countries, I think we are not afraid of a doomsday scenario." Kuleba noted that his proposals for joint production of weapons and ammunition were received positively by the foreign ministers at the recent EU enlargement conference in Berlin. That is why we are now investing huge amounts of money in our own production of all types of weapons, increasing production volumes and militarizing our economy. If the West cannot win this war, then what war can they win? Kuleba wondered. We're militarizing our economy. And then he says that Ukraine is investing in weapons productions, investing the money given to it by the United States, right? This is not like money coming out of Ukraine's economy. This is American money going to Ukraine, and Ukraine is saying that they're going to invest that American money into the military-industrial complex. And then he's talking about creating factories inside of Ukraine, right? Yeah, right. Ukraine is talking about, Kuleba is talking about militarizing Ukraine when Russia's goal is what? To demilitarize Ukraine. So I wonder what's going to happen to all of these Ukraine EU weapons factories. They want to militarize Ukraine. Russia's goal is to demilitarize Ukraine. Militarize Ukraine, demilitarize Ukraine. What is going to happen, Mr. Kuleba? What could possibly happen? And yeah, Kuleba saying that that the West, that the United States cannot win a war. That's pretty much what Kuleba is saying. If you can't win this war, well, what war can you win? Well, the answer to that is not a war against Russia. That's for sure. Kuleba is basically admitting that that the United States, that the European Union, NATO, they pretty much threw everything they had at this this war with Russia, and they lost. An admission of defeat from the foreign minister of Ukraine. And then Kuleba, he said that in reference to the Time magazine article that said that Ukraine is stealing like there's no tomorrow, Kuleba said that this is not true. He said this is not true. No one is stealing in Ukraine. That is what Kuleba said. He basically said that these statements from Time magazine, these are from anonymous officials, and no one in Ukraine, according to Kuleba, is stealing like there is no tomorrow. No one. Okay, if that's the case, then audit. How about an audit? Audit. Let's just confirm, Mr. Foreign Minister, that no one is stealing in Ukraine. Let's make sure that every dollar and every cent is accounted for. But that was Kuleba. No one is stealing in Ukraine because these statements from Time magazine were made by anonymous officials. Let's have an audit. So yeah, that was Kuleba's statement. He was saying that no one is stealing from Ukraine, and he was giving this interview while he was seated next to his swimming pool at his 15-bedroom, 10-bath mansion in Miami, Florida. Just kidding. Just kidding. That's not true. I made that up. But yeah, no one is stealing in Ukraine, according to the foreign minister. And the finance minister of Ukraine, how are we doing on time here? Okay, let's wrap this one up. The finance minister of Ukraine, he threatened the European Union, He kind of threatened the European Union. I think this is kind of a threat to the European Union. Anyway, the finance minister, he basically said in statements yesterday that Ukraine needs I think he said $26 billion for its 2024 budget. So it's going to be $26 billion short. And the finance minister said that the EU needs to give Ukraine this $26 billion because if it doesn't give these $26 billion, well, then the Ukraine economy is going to collapse. And if the Ukraine economy collapses, the finance minister said that the EU is going to have a big migrant problem and a big food inflation problem. That was what the finance minister said. Quote, preservation of macroeconomic stability is quite important because in addition to the war, we would have an economic crisis. If Ukraine will be in crisis, you will have spillover effects in the EU. Consequences of an economic crisis would be very, very traumatic, not only for Ukraine, but for all of Europe, because it can cause effects also for Europe because of migration, because of spillover effect, because of huge increase in prices around Europe, specifically on some food commodities, on possible oil and gas, again, the finance minister asserted. There you have it. Give us 26 billion. If you don't give us 26 billion, our economy collapses because our economy is 100% dependent on money from the United States and from the European Union. If our economy collapses, you're going to have millions of migrants, and you're going to have an increase in food prices. That's basically the statement from the finance minister to the European Union. Boy, has Ursula and Jungle Joseph, boy, have they made a mess of things. They really, really have made a mess of things for Europe and for Ukraine and for the world. Anyway, let's do some clown worlds. And for this clown world, we are going to go to Nancy Pelosi's interview that she gave to the Italian daily Corriere della Sera. And Nancy Pelosi, she said, and I quote, when asked about the European Union and about the government in Italy, she said, quote, there are other EU members who don't do so well with one thing or another. I don't think Hungary should be in the EU today, but once they are in it, it is difficult to get them out. Nancy Pelosi calling for a Hungary exit from the European Union. Once they are in, it's difficult to get them out. That is what Nancy Pelosi is saying. How do we get Hungary out of the EU? Nancy Pelosi wonders. So Hungary, they replied to Nancy Pelosi, and they said, Balzan Orban, who I believe he's the chief of staff for Viktor Orban, no relation, but he tweeted, fortunately in Hungary, it is the Hungarian people who decide and vote on their own future, and no one else has a say in this, not even the Democrats. That is what he said in response to Nancy Pelosi. And finally, let's go back to Elensky's interview to NBC Meet the Press. And Elensky, the Z-man, he said in the interview, and this video is going viral now, he said that if the collective West does not give Ukraine money, like just doesn't hand over money to Ukraine, no strings attached, he's like, well, give us credit at least. Give us credit and we'll pay you back. We'll pay you back whatever money you give us. So I'm going to play that video. And after that video, I'm going to play a small snippet of Elensky talking about his invitation to Trump to visit Ukraine, because Trump replied to Elensky. Trump actually said he likes Elensky. I don't understand why Trump would say that, given that his phone call with Elensky is what got Trump impeached. But anyway, Trump is like, I really like Elensky, but he turned him down as far as his invitation goes. So Trump understands the Elensky curse. He understands that there is an Elensky curse, and he's like, no, I'm not going to travel to Kiev. But in the snippet that I'm going to play for you guys in the segment that you're gonna hear, Elensky, he refers to Putin as he's inviting Trump to Kiev. He refers to Putin as not Putin. He calls him the Putin. And he actually does it twice. He says, the Putin. That's pretty cool, actually. You know you're like a legend when you're the Putin. You know, you don't have the Trump. You don't have the Biden, but you have the Putin. You don't even have the Elensky. You have the Putin. Anyway, I'm going to play those two videos for you. Give us credit, give us a loan, and the Putin. And that's it. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Rockfin, Telegram, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 20% off. Use the code the Duran 20. Take care.
If you can't give us some financial support, okay, please give us a credit and we will give you back money. Not more 24 minutes to explain President Trump that he can't manage this war. He can't bring peace because of the Putin, for this terrible man, for the Putin.